It's the winter of 1996, and the streets of New York City are cruel under the pale glow of the street lamps. A 15-year-old girl huddles against a brick wall, her thin jacket no match for the wind that cuts through like broken glass. In her pocket is nothing, no money, no food, not even a key to a place she can call home. The sound of traffic is distant, drowned by the thud of her own heartbeat. Her name is Liz Murray, and tonight, like so many other nights, she will sleep wherever the shadows hide her from the cold. Just months ago, she had a home. If you could call it that, a cramped apartment with peeling paint, the air thick with the smell of cigarettes, and the sharp sting of crack cocaine. Her parents, loving in fleeting bursts, but trapped in their own addictions, had already begun to fade from the world around them. Liz learned early that hunger was more than an empty stomach. Was an ache in the soul, a gnawing reminder that life could be unfair and merciless. She carried shame like a second skin, moving between the subway and the shelters, learning to vanish in plain sight. And yet, somewhere deep beneath the weight of hardship, a small, stubborn ember of hope refused to die. She didn't know when or how, but she knew this was not how her story would end. Shattered into pieces she could no longer piece back together. Her mother, Jean, the one constant thread in her chaotic life, was diagnosed with AIDS and grew weaker with each passing week. Liz was just 15 when she found herself standing in the dimly lit hospital room, the steady beep of the heart monitor echoing like a countdown. The smell of antiseptic clung to her clothes as she held her mother's frail hand, its warmth fading fast. Within months, Jean was gone, and Liz's already fragile foundation collapsed completely. She returned to a home that no longer felt like hers. Her father, Peter, still trapped in addiction, unable to care for himself, let alone his daughter. With nowhere to go, Liz stepped onto the streets for good, the city swallowing her whole. Days blurred together, cold park benches, the hard plastic of subway seats, the taste of vending machine snacks when she was lucky enough to have coins. But one afternoon, as she sat outside a friend's apartment, shivering under a thin blanket, something shifted. She overheard a conversation about a high school in Manhattan for disadvantaged students, an alternative program where classes were small, teachers cared, and, most importantly, no one asked where you lived. The thought planted itself in her mind like a stubborn weed. For the first time in years, Liz saw a sliver of a path forward. The streets had taught her to survive, but maybe, just maybe, school could teach her to escape. The first morning, Liz walked into Humanities Preparatory Academy. The air felt different, warmer, safer, almost like hope had a smell. She wore secondhand clothes, her hair pulled back, and carried nothing but a notebook and a stubborn resolve. Inside, the walls were covered with student art, and the faint scent of chalk mixed with coffee from the teacher's lounge. It was a world away from the cold concrete of subway stations. Here, the teachers looked her in the eye, called her by name, and expected her to show up not just physically, but mentally. For Liz, school became a lifeline. She devoured every textbook as if the words could build a bridge out of homelessness. Nights were still spent on friends' couches or shelter floors, but days were hers, filled with lectures, essays, and the growing belief that she was capable of more than survival. One history teacher, Perry Weiner, saw her hunger for knowledge and pushed her harder than anyone else ever had. He encouraged her to apply for scholarships, even Harvard. It sounded absurd, like aiming for the moon with bare hands, but Liz applied anyway. When the acceptance letter arrived at Harvard University, full scholarship, she sat on a park bench, letter trembling in her hands, tears cutting through the city's grime on her cheeks. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was rising. Years later, Liz Murray would stand on stages across America, her voice steady but her eyes still carrying the weight of every night spent in shelters and on cold sidewalks. She spoke to students, CEOs, and strangers, telling them not just about Harvard, but about hunger, loneliness, and the choice to rise when the world offers you every reason to fall. Her story became a book, Breaking Night, and later a film that inspired millions. But for Liz, success was never just about degrees or applause. It was about breaking the chain. She used her platform to advocate for homeless youth, creating programs and funding scholarships for kids whose beginnings mirrored her own. Every handshake, every tear-filled conversation reminded her why she fought so hard to prove that where you start does not dictate where you finish. Liz's life is a living testament that even in the darkest winters, the human spirit can plant seeds of spring, and perhaps the most powerful truth she leaves behind is this: when you decide to rise, the world eventually has to make room for you at the table.